So, in the Roman New Year, I would like to talk about something a little bit not different, but something that I've talked about many times before. And for that, I will need to go ahead and go to Jerusalem Post. Let's see here, Jerusalem Post. So they posted a story this morning. A study on non-Jews in Latin America finds a quarter with Jewish ancestry. Now, I suppose that years ago, I would have been shocked by this, but I'm not shocked now. So the story says that some 23% of 6,589 people sampled showed some genes, or more than 5% of their ancestry, associated with Sephardic, East Mediterranean, or South Mediterranean ancestry. Now, let's dig into what they're talking about here. What Jerusalem Post is implying is that although, how do I put this? That though these people in the far-flung regions of the world appear to be originally from the far-flung regions of the world, but there are three separate findings for these people: Sephardic Jew, East Mediterranean, or South Mediterranean ancestry. Okay? Now, what they're implying is, what Jerusalem Post is implying is that East Mediterranean and South Mediterranean, living in the far-flung regions of the world, can be associated with the Sephardic Jews. Okay. Think about that for a minute, all right? Just keep that in the back of your mind. In a genetic study of 6,500 people from 5 Latin American countries, about a quarter displayed traces of what may be, notice they said, maybe Sephardic Jewish ancestry, and they're including not just the actual Sephardic ancestry, but East Mediterranean or South Mediterranean ancestry in that finding. Very, very important to understand what they're doing here. Okay. Okay, geneticist Juan Camilo, I don't speak Spanish, I'm sorry, and his colleagues published their findings last week in Nature Communications magazine in an article titled Latin Americans Show Widespread Converso Ancestry and Imprint of Local Native Ancestry on Physical Appearance. So many of these are shown to be conversos, like Christopher Columbus. Remember me talking about that a couple of days ago. Converso is a Spanish word for people who converted from Judaism to Christianity during the Inquisition in Spain and Portugal. And I have some proof that my ancestors were victims of the Spanish Inquisition. Many conversos, or Anuism in Hebrew, fled to Latin America. Yes, they did. But not only Latin America, as it says, many fled to Latin America. But some were chased all over Europe, like my ancestors were. Chased up into Great Britain, like my ancestors were. Overall, converso genes account for only a small part of the ancestries of the studied populations of each country, ranging from 1% in Brazil to 4% in Chile. Researchers used a set of DNA variations or haplotypes observed to be common among Jews with roots in the Iberian Peninsula. But converso genes are widespread. This fella told JTA some 23% of the 6,589 people sampled showing some genes or more than 5% of their ancestry associated with Sephardic, East Mediterranean, or South Mediterranean ancestry, probably stemming mostly from the clandestine colonial migration of conversos. Folks, you see, this, I'm validated. My video from several days ago is validated. This validates what I've been saying. So I'm going to go back to what I was talking about in that video, the voyages of Christopher Columbus. Remember this picture? Christopher Columbus brought with him conversos and Jews who were suffering at the hands of the inquisitors of Spain and the rest of Europe. And some of our ancestors didn't make it out of Europe until later. It was a horrible time for Jews in those days. Okay? And so these conversos and Jews, practicing Jews, went to South America all the way down to Chile. They went up through here to here, through Mexico into North America. There were settlements as far away as Columbia, South Carolina, no, Charleston. I'm sorry, Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston, South, in the 1500s, I believe it was. Charleston was settled by Jews first. Okay? Now, we're not even talking about Ephraim here, folks. I'm going to try to mention a little bit about Ephraim here in just a few minutes. It appears that, well, a lot of Ephraim is around North America. And there are signs, a lot of them in Texas. Why do I say that? Well, in the Bible, it says Ephraim is like a young bullock unaccustomed to the yoke. What do bullocks and cowboys have in common? Ever thought about that? Something to keep in the back of your mind. I think I'll just go over this right now just to get it out of the way because I might forget about it. Let me give you an example. You know how Roseanne Barr, her last name is obviously Jewish. I know of another fellow whose last name is Barr, and he is Jewish. Okay? But there is another name, surname, much like that name, but it's different. It's Parr. Parr. And many of those are down in Texas. Cowboy land. What does Parr mean in Hebrew? Are you ready for this? Bullock. Or young bull. Ephraim is like a young bull. I'm going to go ahead and go to the scripture real quick, like I said, and get this out of the way. Okay. This is mentioned in Deuteronomy 33:17 and also Jeremiah 31. Jeremiah 31 is about the new covenant, folks. Okay. So let's go to Deuteronomy 33, verse 17 first. This is speaking of Joseph, both Ephraim and Manasseh. Joseph, his glory is like the firstlings of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of the wild oxen. Texas Longhorns, anybody? Have you ever thought about that? And with them, he will push the people together to the ends of the earth. Huh? Huh? Now, you got to understand this is translated from Hebrew, but the ends of the earth are real. So Joseph will be at the ends of the earth, far away, far, far, far away lands. And he's like a young bull, like a wild ox, like a Texas Longhorn, if you will. And they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh. So 10,000s, it doesn't mean just 10,000. It just means Ephraim is going to be 10 times larger than Manasseh in number. He's like the firstling, the best looking of the young bullocks. All right. Let's see. I'll go to Jeremiah 31:18. I have surely heard Ephraim bemoaning himself thus. You have chastised me, and I was chastised as a bullock unaccustomed to the yoke. Turn me, and I will be returned, for you are Jehovah my Elohim. So, one of the signs of Ephraim, Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh is the bullock. Okay. Let's see if, I don't know if I can find it here. So what I'm going to try to do, we'll see if I can do this. Done it before. All right. Well, I'm getting off on the, but if you can look it up for yourself, par, P-A-R, or P-A-R-R means bullock, or young bull in Hebrew. You can look it up for yourself. That'll be your homework for today. Okay. Now, just to prove my point, let me get rid of some of these garbage. Just to prove my point, I'm going to go back to ftdna.com for my own personal origins. Okay, so we go to Family Finder, which is just the admixture between both my mother and my father of 22 or 23 chromosomes. I can't remember. All right. So here's what they are showing. Okay. 5% Jewish diaspora, and that would be Sephardic. So if I click Sephardic, where do you see this? Spain. Okay. This is where the Spanish Inquisition took place. This is where those folks we just talked about, conversos in South America, were driven out of Spain and into the Americas, the ends of the earth. But not only were the Sephardic Jews driven to those places, so were the Ashkenazi Jews eventually, and Ephraim was also driven to the ends of the earth, as we just read. Okay. So let's look at this for a minute. So what FTDNA has, as they have, for me personally, 54% from West and Central Europe and 28% British Isles. That's, like I said, during the, or right after the Spanish Inquisition. Yeah, not that long after the Spanish Inquisition, my ancestors, some of them were driven to the British Isles. Okay, here. All right. Now, Southeast Europe. Okay. Now, what does this mean? Rome, and Greece and Rome. And you go to what was it? I believe it was Joel 3. Where it talks about how the people of this area, in this location, the Philistines, the Syrians, the Iraqis, Egypt, and all them, and the Edomites scattered or drove or sold the Jews to the Greeks so that they may be far away from their homeland. And of course, we all know that the Greeks and the Romans are like two twins from the same mother. Okay. Southeast Europe, 13%. Right? And of course, all right. And West and Central Europe, those are mostly in the Alps. I can safely say that. All right. So I don't need this anymore. So let's go to GEDmatch.com, which is a real nice supplement to DNA testing. Now, for those of you who are worried about DNA testing, how it's going to reveal some things about you that you might not want to see, or maybe you are a fugitive of justice, or maybe you are worried about the government getting their hands on your DNA. Well, if you are a fugitive of justice and have committed some crime that you need to answer for, maybe you just need to go ahead and answer for it. But to those who are worried about the government getting a hold of your DNA, there's going to come a time when they will need to get a hold of your DNA so that they can transport you back to Israel if you are one of them. So it may be necessary, and you doing a DNA test now might be helpful in your transport back to the Holy Land if you have Jewish or Israelitish blood. So, as we saw in the Jerusalem Post, take a look at this. Remember I said that they're making a connection here with East Mediterranean or South Mediterranean ancestry associated with Sephardic Jews. This is what they're doing here. So let's analyze my GED match J-test or Jew test admixture here. If we're going to do it this way, folks, let's just go ahead and do it and see what happens. Now, GED match, their samples do not show me related to their samples of Sephardic Jews, or either that they are not sampling Sephardic Jews, they are sampling Ashkenazi Jews. Okay, But the samplings, which is a group of people from FTDNA, is showing that I am related in a 5% way to their Sephardic population that they use for sampling. Okay. What do we see here? We see GED matches sampling of Ashkenazi. We see 3.35%. So now we have another 3.35% of Jews in somebody else's sampling group that I am related to. But wait a minute. Remember, Jerusalem Post said South Mediterranean and East Mediterranean. Okay. So then you see exactly what they said. East Mediterranean or South Mediterranean. Okay. So let's look at that for a minute. East Mediterranean, 10.27%. Now, Jerusalem Post is associating this East Mediterranean with Sephardic Jews. But wait. West Mediterranean, 15%. You know what that is. West Mediterranean would be Spain and Portugal. So this is where they've got FTDNA got my connection to the Sephardic Jews were in Spain and Portugal. So you really have to take out the 5% from here and put it together with the Ashkenazi, and you get, of course, 8% and some change Jewish, right? But once again, what I'm trying to tell you is they are associating East Mediterranean with the Jewish population. And if they are doing that, you have to add the 10% to the other 8%. And you've got 18%. Because you see, it is very clear that those of us who live on the far-flung regions of the earth, who are from the East Mediterranean, were driven to those locations. Driven, forced out, you see. I'm just going by what they're saying on the Jerusalem Post here, folks. I'm not trying to embellish, to blow this thing up out of proportion or nothing. Once again, some 23% of the 6,500 some odd people sampled some genes or showed some genes or more than 5% of their ancestry associated with Sephardic, East Mediterranean, or South Mediterranean ancestry. They're talking about me. That's what they're talking about. But I'm in North America. They're in South America. But they're talking about me. And they might be talking about you. You see, why is this happening? Why? I'll tell you why it's happening. Because Moses prophesied, I believe it's in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 30. Yeah. Now, if you go and you look at Deuteronomy 29, you see talking about the blessings and the curse, okay, that was to come upon Israel. Moses told them, you're going to do the wrong thing. You're going to be forced out of the land. You're going to be scattered over to all the nations of the earth. And he's talking, and he makes them take the oath of the old covenant. And I will start in verse 14. Neither with you only do I make this covenant and this oath, but with him that stands here with us this day before Jehovah our Elohim, and also with him that is not here with us this day. For you know how we have dealt in the land of Egypt, and how we came through the nations which you passed by. And you have seen their abominations and their idols of wood and stone, silver and gold, which were among them. But lest there should be among you man or woman, family or tribe, whose heart turns away this day from Jehovah our Elohim, and to go and serve the gods of those nations. And one of them is Jesus, folks. And indeed, Israel has done this. There's going to be a change, folks. Lest there should be among you a root that bears gall and wormwood, and it shall come to pass that when he hears the words of this curse, that he bless himself in his heart, saying, I shall have peace, though I walk in the imagination of my heart to add drunkenness to thirst. Jehovah will not spare him, but the anger of Jehovah and his jealousy shall smoke against that man, and all the curses that are written in this book shall lie upon him, and Jehovah shall blot his name from under heaven. And Jehovah shall separate him unto evil out of all the tribes of Israel, according to all the curses of the covenant that are written in this book, in this Torah, so that the generation to come of your children that shall rise up after you, and the stranger which shall come up from a far land shall say, when they shall see the plague of that land and the sickness which Jehovah has laid upon it, and he did. History proves that it happened. And the whole land thereof is brimstone and salt and burning, which is not sown nor bears any grass growing therein, just like Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which Jehovah overthrew in his anger and his wrath. Even all the Goyim shall say, why has Jehovah done this unto this land? What does he mean? The heat of his great anger. Then men shall say, because they have forsaken the covenant of Jehovah of their fathers, which he had made with them, when they brought them forth out of the land of Egypt. For they went and served other gods and worshipped them, gods whom they knew not, and whom he had not given unto them. And the anger of Jehovah was kindled against this land, to bring upon it all the curses that are written in this book. And Jehovah rooted them out of their land in anger and in wrath and in great indignation, and cast them into another land, as it is this day. So here we are. Here we are, folks. We are cast into another land, far, far away from our homeland. Here we are. We are living proof that this happened. Okay. The secret things belong to Jehovah, our Elohim, but those things which are revealed belong unto us and to our children forever, that we may do all the words of this Torah. Now we go to Deuteronomy 30. It shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon you, the blessing and the curse which I have set before you, then you shall call them to mind among all the nations where you were scattered. Well, I'm telling you, folks, this is happening right now. Right now. This is why I am wearing the yellow star. I'm calling into mind the blessings and the cursings and calling into mind the suffering of my people in Europe and all the faraway lands. And recognizing that suffering, recognizing the victims of the Holocaust, but not just the Holocaust, the persecution that happened over and over and over and over again by the Europeans and others. And the fact that payback must happen because of it. But anyway, I'll continue. You shall call them into mind among all the nations. This is people taking DNA tests and finding out that they have Hebrew ancestry. That's what it is. And then you shall return unto Jehovah your Elohim, and you shall obey his voice according to all I command you this day, you and your children, with all your heart, with all of your soul, that Jehovah your Elohim will return your captivity. He's going to reverse your fortunes, folks. All of you who find yourself with Hebrew ancestry, he's going to cause you to return, each and every one of you. Each and every one of us. All the nations where Jehovah your Elohim has scattered you. We are scattered, folks. And if any of yours be driven out into the utmost parts of the sky, from there will Jehovah your Elohim gather you, and from there he will fetch you. And Jehovah your Elohim will bring you into the land which you have your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it. That is the new covenant. That's what that is. Now, I know many of your Christian friends says, no, that's not the new covenant. You have to understand, folks, that Christianity today has rejected the new covenant. And this is the reason why they have followed all idolatry to its extremes. This is the reason why they are in a state of delusion, that each of these Christian nations are full of every kind of evil. Men walk after every kind of evil in the imaginations of their own hearts. Okay? And it's backed up in Jeremiah 31. The new covenant is this: all Israel will be gathered together once again from the places where Jehovah had scattered them. Each and every single one of them will be brought back and be placed in that land. And those who reject the Son of David as king will be thrown out. And you shall possess it, and he will do you good and multiply you above your forefathers. This is the new covenant. Moses talked about the new covenant. And he will circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed, so that you will love Jehovah your Elohim with all of your heart, with all of your soul, so that you may live. And then what? And then Jehovah your Elohim will put all these curses upon your enemies. You know, the inquisitors. And on them that hate you, which persecuted you. There must be payback, folks. There must be payback for what was done to the Jews and all Israel. And you shall return and obey the voice of Jehovah and do all his commandments, which I command you this day. Okay, so now there's something that I need to show you before I go to jewishgen.org. And jewishgen.org is a wonderful, wonderful website that I hope each and every one of you subscribe to. It's free of charge. You don't have to pay anything for it, but it's one of the most beneficial websites there is on the internet today. But I have to go to Joel 3, and I'll show you why in just a second. Okay. No, notice this, that Joel 3 is talking about, as people would say, Armageddon. Okay? Way down here. In verse 19, it says, Egypt shall be a desolation, and Edom shall be a desolate wilderness. Why? Why is that? Because of the violence against the children of Judah, and because they have shed innocent blood in their land. But wait, didn't Europe do that too? Aren't the Europeans just as guilty of shedding Jewish blood in their lands? Okay, the implication of this particular passage is this, is that any land that is full of the blood, innocent blood of the Jews, is going to be made a desolation and a desolate wilderness. So Europe, you're finished. Europe, your land will become desolate. Why? Because your land is full of the blood of the Jews. Okay, now I want to go to jewishgen.org, folks. What I want to do, first of all, is I want everybody to take a look at this website. Okay, search for surnames. Now, it starts with Austria, but you can go to any of these countries and search for surnames, okay? But look, there's Holocaust records and there's cemetery records. Think about the surnames in your past. Now, what jewishgen.org does is they will do a search for what sounds phonetically like your surname. I'll give you an example. Okay. There's a surname in my family tree. It is Peachy, P-E-A-C-H-Y, but it has a whole bunch of different variations in my family tree. Beachy, and then Bitchy, which is B-I-T-C-H, B-I-S-T-C-H, or B-I-T-S-C-H-I, okay? And then it goes like this here. That, all right? So let's look for it. and see if there are any phonetically like that. How about we go straight to the Holocaust records? Cemetery, well, I'll go to cemetery records first, and then we'll go back to the Holocaust records. Look at this, okay? Not a whole lot of them, but oh, what do we have here? A bunch of them are in where? Argentina. Argentina. Let's look. And you will see a whole bunch of variations of that name. Buche. Okay. Buche. Actually, you only see one variation. So then let's do this. Let's go and look under Holocaust records. All right. Dachau. 17 records. See that? Bucci. Bucci, Bucci, Bucci. Bucci. Bauchi. Bashki. You see, these are variations of that name, or that name, Buchki, is a variation of Bucci, and Beachy and Peachy is actually came from Bucci. You see. Okay. What I'm doing is I'm showing you how this website phonetically finds these surnames. And of course, some of these family surnames are greater than others. All right, Romania. See, there's another variation of it. Bucha. Bucha. All right. So maybe you will say, oh, but Henry, I have a English surname. And of course, most English surnames are not associated with the Jews. However, there is one that is. Are you ready? Well, that's an innocent surname, isn't it? Cook. Surely there are no Jews with that name, right? Let's look. What? Vilnius ghetto list? 205 records? Are you serious? Look at all this. The Lot's ghetto list. 610 records? Really? Look at all this. You can't even add it all up, can you? Look at this. How many altogether? 2,894 matches. What? Cook? No way. Let's go to the Vilnius ghetto list, shall we? Now, these are all variations. This is CAC. And Jews or Hebrew language doesn't recognize vowels. That's the reason why when they change their surnames going from one place to the other, they would change vowels so that they would be harder to find and keep the name intact. Okay, so that's one. Let's go to another. Let's go to the, the big one. Where did that go? I can find where did it all go? 610. Was I just there? Wasn't I just there? I'll go to the Lost Ghetto list. Okay. Now, okay, so these are maiden or other so these a lot of these are the maiden names of their wives. Right. I have to find a location, like for instance in Germany. This is hard to do. Dachau. That's what I was looking for. Okay. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Folks, you see, Cook. There it is, folks. There it is. Right there in front of you. So if you have a surname, Cook, maybe you thought that there was no Jewish blood in you, maybe you want to go ahead and rule that out. Look at this. Look at this. You see, folks? This is proof right here. What you see here is proof that they would change the vowels out of convenience. But Cook is in there. How about Cooper? Well, Cooper is another English, innocuous English name, isn't it? Or is it? (1,156) matches in the Holocaust database, folks. Are you serious? Look at this. My goodness. And for those of you, oh, look at this. There's once again the Lost Ghetto list. Cooper. There you have it, folks. Caper, Capper, Coper, Cooper. Those are all the same surnames. Okay. What about you Amish? Well, there are a lot of Schwartzes among the Amish, isn't there? Of course, we know that Schwartz is very common among the Jews. And common among the Amish. Take a look at this, folks. 20,000 in the Holocaust database. 20,000. Now, we'll go and look up Byler, you Amish. And Byler has a extreme divergent, extreme amount of variations in here. Look at this. 1,669 matches found. And this is Byler, Baylor, Beeler, Wheeler, Viler, Valer. You know the deal. It's the same thing. Look at the numbers, Amish folks. Okay. Okay. ready for another Amish surname? Ish. Hello, Amish. Knock, knock, knock. Is anybody listening? Is anybody paying attention? 4,552. Where were they? Hungary, Belarus, France, hidden children in France, North Bavaria, Berlin, Baden, Dutch survivors, the Hesse. This, folks, Schindler's List? There are 3 in the Schindler's List. 12 is so many. With the last name Ish, or a variation of that. Hostetler. That's another one. I don't know if this is going to do the search like Hostetler, because there's so many variations of Hostetler, right? And so you don't see any. Oh, that's not a Jewish name. Wrong. Let's do a different version of Hostetler. That one. Oh. Well, we have 101 total matches found of that variation. Okay. All right. You get the gist of it. Okay. I'm just trying to remember the others. Oh, here is an Amish surname. Gerber. 866. This is in the Holocaust, folks. Another one. Not that many of them, but this is in my family tree. Gerber is in my family tree too, by the way. Shrog. Shrog is where the Shrugs came from. Amish folks. We got 74 matches of Shrog. All right. I'm just trying to think of the others. I think I'm stumped. Well, I could go, that might be enough, but I could go to myancestry.com and find all these names in my family tree. And I think what I have done here is help people find a path if they're looking for a path. You know, you can start with jewishgen.org if you want to. Start with that, and if that provides you with enough convincing evidence, then you can take the next path if you so desire. And if you're going to take the DNA path, I would strongly recommend that you use ftdna.com, because the owner and operator of that particular website, he is Jewish, and he is the only one, as far as I know, that does a search for Sephardic Jews. Everybody does Ashkenazi, but he does Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews. And then you can go to, and you can upload that information onto gedmatch.com. And this is a little bit difficult, but if you you can do chromosome paintings. This is kind of cool too. Let's see here. J-test. Put my number in and continue. You can look at each and every one of your chromosomes, folks. This is a cool website. It only costs like $5 a month. So you can take your DNA test from ftdna.com and upload that to gedmatch.com, and you can do this. So look, take a look at this. Each and every chromosome is different, and you'll have a different amount of certain genes or certain, well, however you call it. Okay, so look, let's look at it for a minute. Ashkenazi. So they have none for Sephardic in gedmatch.com. But if you do like the Jerusalem Post says and add East Mediterranean in it and also Middle Eastern, just take a look. You see this dark green right here? See that? In my first chromosome. And then this pale green right here, Ashkenazi. You see, you will see there's a nice little. Now, West Asian is also East Mediterranean. There's really no difference between the two. And so you can add that in there as well. Notice how this all comes together right here. So the second one, and then there's the third one, fourth, etc. Now, when I go to, was it the 21st? Is it the 21st? Yes, look at this. On my 21st chromosome, look at the major chunk of Ashkenazi Jew in the 21st chromosome. Isn't this website cool? I mean, what is that? About a third? I'm looking at it, and of course, that's a major chunk here, folks, on the 21st chromosome. So hopefully I have encouraged everyone to start exploring their ancestry to see if you are, in fact, have Jewish ancestry. And even if you don't, you could very well be of Ephraim, Joseph, so to speak, lost 10 tribes. And that's going to be harder to find. But one of the ways to find it is in your surnames. But in the end, Jehovah, our Father in heaven, has made a promise. He's going to institute the new covenant through the Messiah, son of David. And the new covenant is this. In Jeremiah 31, if you care to go look, he is going to bring all Israel, from the least to the greatest, back into the Holy Land. That's a part of the new covenant. And both of Jeremiah 30 and 31 read together from beginning to end is the new covenant for Israel. Regardless of what the Gentiles tell you, regardless of whether or not they say, as they claim that somehow the church replaces Israel. You see, Paul warned the Romans, if you care to read Romans 11, he warned the Roman church that they are not allowed to boast against the branches, because if they boasted against the branches, they're not boasting against the branches, they're boasting against the root. And if they boast against the root, which is the root of Jesse, then Jehovah is going to throw them out and bring Israel back in. Well, I have an announcement to make, folks. History shows that the Romans disobeyed the words of Paul. They boasted against the branches. Not only did they boast against the branches, but they persecuted the branches. They drove the branches out of Rome, out of Europe, and they chased them into the furthest reaches of the earth, which is why I am located in North Carolina, and why many of my relatives are in South America. That's right, South America. That's why. Because Rome boasted against the branches. Rome persecuted the branches. And it is written. I'm going to have to bring up screen share back. This is folks, this is so important. Let's go to Romans 11. I have to do this, folks. Okay. I say then, has Jehovah cast away his people? No. Because I'm also an Israelite of the seed of Abraham and the tribe of Benjamin. He has not cast away his people which he foreknew. What? Why then did the Romans do it? Why am I sitting here in North Carolina then? Far, far away from my homeland. Why is that happening? Why did that happen? And why are all these people in Argentina, Chile, North America? Why? Why has this happened? I'll tell you why. Okay. Verse 18. He's telling the Romans, boast not against the branches. What did the Romans do? They disobeyed their one and only apostle. And because they disobeyed Paul, Paul gave them a warning. Paul knew what they were going to do, just like Moses knew what the Israelites were going to do. Paul knew what the Romans were going to do. They were going to do evil. He told them, you may not boast against the branches. You may not, but they did. But if you boast, you don't bear the root, but the root bears you. So what he is saying is, you Romans, if you boast against the branches, you're boasting against the root. What root? Let's find out what root that is. It's in Romans 15. The root of Jesse will spring up. So if they boast against, and he even says right here, the root of Jesse will spring up. One will arise to rule over the nations, in whom the Gentiles will hope. Well, there was a generation of Gentiles who did cleave to the root of Jesse. That was in the days of Paul. And once Paul died, they turned away from the truth. What scripture was he pointing to? Isaiah 11. In that day, the root of Jesse will stand as a banner for the peoples, the nations. The Gentiles will rally to him, and his resting place shall be glorious. Isaiah 11:1. There shall come forth a rod out of the root of Jesse. Okay, right. So when Paul was telling the Romans, boast not against the branches, in verse 18, because if you boast, you bear not the root, but the root bears you. He's saying, if you boast, you're boasting against the root. What happened? They boasted against the branches, and in so doing, they boasted against the root. You will say then the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief, they were broken off, and you stand by faith. Don't be high-minded, but fear. What happened to the Romans? They became high-minded, and they had no fear. Because if Jehovah did not spare the natural branches of those days, take heed lest he also spare not you. But they didn't take heed, did they? History proves that they didn't take heed. History proves that they boasted against the branches. Look at the goodness and the severity of Jehovah. On them which fell severity, but toward you goodness. But only if you continue in his goodness. They did not continue in his goodness at all. As soon as Paul was dead, they turned their backs on the truth. Such a shame. He says, otherwise you shall also be cut off. You're going to get the same treatment as the Jews did. And they, the Jews and all Israel, it says, if they abide not still in unbelief, but Moses said, they will return to belief. They will. Moses said that. We just read it. Did we not? We just read it in Deuteronomy 29 and 30. Did we not? And they shall be grafted back in again. Because Jehovah is able to graft. But the Romans are saying, oh no, they are cursed forever. Well, I tell you what, Romans, because you say that Israel is cursed forever and are the devil's people, that label will be put upon you, the enemy of Israel, in exact accordance to what Moses said in Deuteronomy 30. Now, I wanted to point out something here. Verse 16, for if the first fruit, that is the root of Jesse, is holy, then the lump, which is Israel, is also holy. And if the root of Jesse be holy, so are the branches. Here's what you can draw from this. Paul is connecting the root of Jesse to the branches, making the branches the brethren of the root of Jesse. This is what Paul is doing. This is New Testament doctrine, folks. So if this is New Testament doctrine, that makes the Jews, all Israel, the brethren of the root, the Messiah. Now let's go look at this. Matthew 25, verse 34. the sheep and the goats. Verse 31. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit on his throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered together all the goyim. Ouch. Yes. All the nations. And if you look at Strong's Concordance in the Greek, the word is ethnos, which means all the nations that are not Israelite. And that's what it says. In fact, you can go look. And I'm going to make sure that there is no wiggle room here, folks. I'm going to show you something. All right. Ethnos, 1484 in the Greek. A race or a nation, people to nations, as distinct from Israel. In other words, goyim. Ethnos and goyim is the same thing. All right. And he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides the sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand and the goats on the left. And then the king shall say unto them on his right hand, Come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Because I was hungry, and you gave me meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came unto me. And then shall the righteous answer him and saying, Master, when did we see you hungry and fed you, or thirsty and gave you drink? When did we see a stranger and took you in? As a stranger took you in, or naked and clothed you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and came unto you? And the king shall say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you have done it to one. See that word one? Singular. If you have done it to just one of the least in size or amount of dignity, even one of the lowest of my brethren, a brother. Remember, New Testament doctrine, Paul equated the branches of Israel with the root of Jesse, making them brethren. That was Paul. You can't, you Gentiles, you may not speak against the words of Paul. He was your only apostle. You must obey the words of Paul, or you will be cast out. So Paul is saying that the root and the branches are one and the same, essentially, making them brethren. So when he says the least of my brethren, he is saying the least of the Jews. That's right. And the least means the most worthless of the Jews. If you Gentiles, if you have done any one of these things, look, if you gave one of the least of the Jews something to eat, or something to drink, or some clothing, or if you took him in for the night because out of the cold, or put clothing on him, or ministered unto them if they were sick, or visited when they was in prison, when the Jew was in prison. How about, I'll give you a really good example of what some would say is the least of the brethren. What's his name? Not and forgot. There was a fellow who was convicted of espionage for Israel's sake. And he ended up in the Butner prison. Okay? Now he's out. He's allowed to get out. Now, he has a very controversial past. It says the least of the brethren. Just visit him while he was in prison. and you came unto me, then shall the righteous answer. Okay, so he says, inasmuch as you have done it to one, just one, just one, that's it. You see, he's giving the Gentiles a lot of room here. A lot of room. You've done one act of decency to the least of the Jews. One act of decency to the least of one of the Jews. You have done it unto him. Why? Because the branches are synonymous with the root, just like Paul said. You want to talk about merciful? You want to talk about giving the Gentiles so much leeway? Okay. Now, what I want to do is go to Irene Good. She's a classic example of the decency that a Gentile has done for an Israelite. Irene Good. And I encourage everyone to read the story of Irene Good. She, based upon what is written in Matthew 25, is going to be enter into the kingdom, even though her religion was the religion of the beast. Irene Good Opdyke, who risked her life in World War II by hiding Jews in a cellar beneath a German major's villa. A story of courage that decades later would make her an internationally known speaker has died. She was 85. She was 25, working as the major's housekeeper when in 1943 she overheard that the Gestapo was about to sweep through a local Jewish ghetto in Poland. Concerned that the 12 Jews with whom she had worked in a laundry would be taken away, she decided to hide them in a cellar under a gazebo. They remained a secret for 8 months. When the major discovered the Jews, she bought more time for her friends by becoming the major's mistress. All of the Jews survived. So what this is essentially saying is she had to whore herself. Yes, I said that. Let me say it again. She had to whore herself. She had to prostitute herself. She had to remove her own dignity to save these Jews. Even her own priest told her that she was wrong in doing this. But her Catholic priest, he was wrong. And if he did nothing for one of these Jews, his end is going to be different. See, Irene Good, she placed herself among the righteous of the Gentiles, you see. And Israel has recognized her as such, and rightly so. But those who didn't among the Gentiles, this is going to happen to them. Verse 41, and then shall he also say unto them on the left hand, depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you took me not in. Naked, and you clothed me not. Sick and in prison, and you visited me not. And they shall answer him and saying, Master, when did we see you hungry, or athirst, or stranger, or naked, and sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto you? He said unto them, verily I say unto you, because you didn't do it to a single one, not one. Showed no act of kindness to a single Jew. None. Not even to the least. You did it not unto me, and these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but to the righteous into life eternal. You see, folks, yes, there will be a bunch of Gentiles saved, but not because, not in the way, not in the way that the preacher tells you. Nope. Nope. Don't listen to the preacher. You see, if you see somebody in need today, they may be brethren of the Messiah and not even know it. They might be, I don't know, 5% Sephardic Jew. They may not even know it. Least of the brethren, folks. Give him something to drink. Give him something to eat. Make sure he has clothes on his back, or her. Why? So that you would be counted among the blessed. Because it is not your religion that's going to save you, folks. No. No Gentile. It's not your religion that's going to save you. It is going to be this act. Because I was hungry and you gave me meat. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you took me not, you took me in, etc. You never know. You never know if that person that's down on his luck might be one of the least. You don't know, do you? Now, in the days of the Holocaust, it was more difficult to do the right thing because you will have been seen as a collaborator with the enemy. That took more faith. It took more courage. And I mention Irene Gut over and over. And the reason why I do is because the religious folks have a hard time grasping that as doing the right thing. Yeah, she sacrificed her own dignity. She whored herself, she prostituted herself to the Nazis so that the Jews might live. She has her place. So I hope the Gentiles, any of you who are watching this video, please take a warning. To those of you who are suspicious you might have Jewish blood in you, I encourage you to search it out. I've showed you how easy it is to do. You can start with jewishgen.org. It's free.